The sky above New York City was unusually clear that day, the kind of blue that made people pause and look up. It wasn't long before something strange caught their attention. A massive object descended silently from the heavens, its surface shimmering like liquid metal. The ship was enormous, bigger than any skyscraper in the city, and it hovered over Times Square as if it owned the place. People stopped what they were doing, talking, walking, eating, and stared in awe. Some pulled out their phones to record the moment, while others simply stood frozen, unsure of what to think. Ethan Carter stood among the crowd, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his leather jacket. He had been on his way to a meeting at the university where he worked as a biologist when the ship appeared. Like everyone else, he stopped to watch, his dark brown hair ruffled slightly in the breeze, and his green eyes narrowed as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. Ethan wasn't the type to panic easily, but even he felt a knot forming in his stomach. This wasn't just some aircraft or drone. This was something entirely alien. Not far from him, Olivia Dawson adjusted the strap of her messenger bag and tilted her head back to get a better view. She was an astrophysicist, someone who spent most of her time studying the stars and planets through telescopes. But now those distant worlds seemed much closer. Her sharp mind raced with questions. Who were these visitors? What did they want? And why had they chosen Earth, or more specifically New York City? The ship didn't move for several minutes, almost as if it were waiting for humanity to react. Then, without warning, a beam of light shot down from its underside, illuminating a wide circle in the middle of Times Square. The crowd gasped, stepping back instinctively. From the light emerged figures unlike anything anyone had ever seen. They were tall and slender, their bodies made of what looked like translucent crystal. Each step they took caused faint pulses of light to ripple across their forms, making them appear both beautiful and otherworldly. One of the figures stepped forward, raising a hand to signal silence. Though no words were spoken aloud, a voice echoed inside everyone's minds. "We are the Valens," it said, calm and steady. "We have come to study your species." Ethan blinked in surprise. Telepathy? That was new. Beside him, Olivia frowned, clearly analyzing every detail. The voice continued, explaining that the Valens had observed Earth for centuries, watching how humans lived, fought, and died. To them, humans seemed fragile, short-lived, prone to illness, and constantly at odds with one another. Yet there was something about humanity that intrigued them enough to visit in person. "We wish to understand you better," the voice concluded. "To do so, we will conduct tests. Representatives from your world will be chosen to participate." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "Tests? What kind of tests?" Ethan glanced around, noticing the mix of fear and excitement on people's faces. Some looked eager to volunteer, while others seemed ready to run. Before anyone could protest, the Valens scanned the crowd with glowing eyes, selecting 4 individuals almost instantly. Ethan felt a strange warmth wash over him, and suddenly, he knew he'd been chosen. He turned to see Olivia standing nearby, her expression unreadable but determined. Joining them were 2 others, Daniel Harper, a young engineer with messy blonde hair and a nervous smile, and Claire Bennett, a medical researcher whose sharp gaze suggested she wasn't one to back down from a challenge. The 4 were led into the ship, which opened a sleek doorway that hummed softly as they approached. Inside, the walls glowed faintly, casting an ethereal light over everything. There were no visible controls or buttons, just smooth surfaces that seemed alive with energy. Ethan couldn't help but marvel at the technology, though part of him wondered if they'd made a mistake by coming here. Once inside, the Valens explained the purpose of the tests. "Your species claims to value strength and resilience," Zinara, the leader of the group, communicated telepathically. Her form pulsed brighter than the others, marking her authority. "Yet we see only weakness. Prove us wrong." Olivia crossed, her arms, her chin lifting slightly. "Strength isn't always obvious," she replied aloud, surprising herself with her boldness. "Maybe you're looking in the wrong places." Zinara tilted her head, intrigued. "Then show us where to look." The first test began shortly after. The 4 humans were taken to a large chamber filled with floating platforms and shifting walls. The air smelled metallic, and the temperature was cooler than expected. Ethan glanced at Olivia, who gave him a reassuring nod. Whatever was about to happen, they would face it together. As the test began, the room transformed around them. The platforms rearranged themselves into a maze and the walls started closing in. Suddenly, holographic projections appeared showing scenes of natural disasters, earthquakes, hurricanes, wildfires. The goal was simple: navigate the maze while enduring simulated injuries inflicted by the environment. Daniel stumbled early on, clutching his ankle after tripping over a loose platform. Claire rushed to his side, examining the injury. "It's not real," she muttered, though her tone betrayed her concern. "This is all part of the simulation." But then something unexpected happened. As Daniel tried to stand, his ankle began to heal. At least that's what it felt like. The pain faded quickly, replaced by a tingling sensation. Claire's eyes widened. "Did you feel that?" she asked, turning to Ethan and Olivia. Ethan nodded slowly. "Yeah, I felt it too." He rolled up his sleeve, revealing a small cut he hadn't noticed before. Within seconds, the wound closed completely, leaving behind unblemished skin. Olivia's mind raced. Was this part of the simulation, or had the Valens triggered some kind of biological response in their bodies? Either way, it changed everything. Humanity might not have been as fragile as the Valens assumed. Zinara watched the humans closely, her crystalline form flickering with curiosity. For the first time, doubt crept into her thoughts. Perhaps there was more to these creatures than met the eye. Outside the ship, the rest of the world waited anxiously for news. Rumors spread like wildfire, fueled by snippets of information from witnesses and analysts. Social media buzzed with speculation, and news outlets scrambled to cover the event. Some called it the beginning of a new era, while others feared it might be the end. Back inside the ship, Ethan, Olivia, Daniel, and Claire pressed on, determined to prove the Valens wrong. Little did they know, their journey was just beginning, and the discoveries they would make would change not only their lives but the fate of humanity itself. The chamber inside the Valens ship was unlike anything Ethan, Olivia, Daniel, and Claire had ever experienced. The walls shimmered with a faint glow, constantly shifting and rearranging themselves to create new challenges. Floating platforms hovered at different heights, forcing the humans to leap across gaps or climb steep inclines. The air smelled metallic, and every movement echoed softly, as though the room itself was alive. As the test continued, the simulations grew more intense. Earthquakes shook the ground beneath their feet, causing the platforms to tilt dangerously. Sudden gusts of wind threatened to knock them off balance, while holographic flames licked at their legs. Each obstacle seemed designed not just to test their physical endurance but also their mental strength. Claire stumbled when one of the platforms tilted sharply, her arms flailing as she tried to regain her footing. Ethan lunged forward, grabbing her wrist before she could fall. "You okay?" he asked, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "I'm fine," Claire replied quickly, though her breathing was labored. She glanced down at her knee, which had scraped against the edge of the platform during the fall. But instead of blood or bruising, the skin began to heal almost instantly. A faint tingling sensation spread over the area, leaving behind smooth, unmarked flesh. "This is insane," Daniel muttered, watching Claire's knee repair itself. He reached up to touch a cut on his forehead from an earlier collision with a low-hanging beam. To his surprise, the wound closed within seconds, leaving no trace of injury. "What's happening to us?" Olivia stepped closer, her sharp eyes scanning their surroundings. "It's not natural," she said thoughtfully. "This has to be part of the simulation, or maybe something the Valens are doing to our bodies." Ethan frowned. "Why would they do that? Are they trying to help us, or hurt us?" Before anyone could answer, another wave of simulated danger hit. This time it came in the form of searing heat. The temperature in the chamber spiked dramatically, making it hard to breathe. Holographic projections showed walls of fire closing in on all sides, forcing the group to move faster. Sweat dripped down their faces and their clothes clung to their bodies as they scrambled to find safe footing. Despite the intensity of the situation, Claire's mind remained focused. She noticed patterns emerging in how their injuries healed. Every scrape, burn, or bruise disappeared at an accelerated rate, far beyond what normal human biology should allow. It was as if some hidden mechanism in their DNA had been activated, unlocking abilities they didn't know they possessed. "We're not just healing," Claire said suddenly, her voice cutting through the tension. "Our bodies are adapting. Look." She pointed to Daniel's hands, which had briefly touched one of the fiery holograms. His palms were red and blistered for a moment, but then the blisters vanished, replaced by tougher, slightly calloused skin. Olivia's eyes widened. "Adapting, like evolution sped up?" "Exactly," Claire replied. "But this isn't random mutation. Something triggered it. Maybe stress, maybe fear. It's activating parts of our genetic code that we've never used before." Ethan nodded slowly, piecing together what she was saying. "So the Valens aren't just testing us. They're pushing us to see what we're capable of." The realization sent a shiver down their spines. If Claire was right, then the Valens weren't merely observing humanity. They were experimenting on them, probing the limits of their biology. But why? And what did they hope to gain? The next challenge proved even more grueling. The floating platforms disappeared entirely, leaving the humans suspended mid-air by invisible forces. Gravity shifted unpredictably, pulling them in different directions. One moment, Ethan found himself walking upside down on what felt like the ceiling. The next, he was plummeting toward the floor, only to be caught by some unseen force. To make matters worse, the holographic projections turned into scenarios of extreme physical trauma. Ethan watched in horror as a massive boulder appeared out of nowhere, crushing his leg. Pain shot through his body, so real it brought tears to his eyes. But just as quickly as it came, the pain subsided. He looked down to see his leg bending, back into shape, bones knitting together seamlessly. Olivia wasn't spared either. In her simulation, she fell into a pit of jagged rocks, her arms and legs sliced open by sharp edges. Yet within moments, the wounds sealed themselves, leaving her unharmed. Her heart pounded as she realized the implications. Whatever the Valens were doing, it wasn't just healing. It was regeneration on a level no human had ever imagined. Daniel struggled the most with the psychological toll of the tests. Each injury, no matter how temporary, felt agonizingly real. When a simulated snake bit him on the arm, injecting venom that made his muscles seize up, he screamed in terror. But even as the venom coursed through his veins, his body fought back, neutralizing the toxins and restoring his strength. "You're stronger than you think," Claire told him firmly, gripping his shoulder. "Don't let the fear take over. We can handle this." Daniel swallowed hard, nodding reluctantly. He forced himself to focus, channeling his panic into determination. Slowly but surely, he began to adapt, learning to anticipate the challenges and respond with clarity rather than chaos. Throughout it all, Zainara and the other Valans observed silently from a control panel outside the chamber. Their crystalline forms pulsed with light, reflecting their growing fascination and unease. For centuries, they had believed themselves superior to other species, their immortality a testament to their perfection. Yet here were humans, fragile creatures by comparison, demonstrating powers that rivaled even the Valans' own abilities. Zainara exchanged glances with her companions, her thoughts swirling with questions. What did this mean for their mission? Had they underestimated humanity? And if so, what else might these beings be capable of? Back in the chamber, the final phase of the test pushed the humans to their absolute limit. The environment shifted once again, this time plunging them into icy conditions. Snow whipped around them, stinging their faces and freezing their fingers. The platforms became slick with frost, making it nearly impossible to keep their footing. Claire slipped, her foot sliding off the edge of a platform. She cried out as she fell, bracing herself for impact. But instead of hitting the ground, she landed gently, cushioned by an invisible force. As she stood up, shivering, she noticed something strange. Her body wasn't just tolerating the cold, it was adjusting to it. Her core temperature stabilized and her extremities stopped feeling numb. It was as if her physiology had rewired itself to survive. Ethan helped her back onto the platform, his expression grim. "We're not done yet," he said, looking ahead. Sure enough, the challenges kept coming, each one more brutal than the last. But with every trial, the humans grew stronger, their bodies adapting in ways that defied logic. Finally, after what felt like hours, the simulation ended. The chamber returned to its original state, the walls still and quiet once more. Exhausted, but alive, Ethan, Olivia, Daniel, and Claire collapsed onto the floor, gasping for breath. Xynara entered the room, her presence commanding immediate attention. "You have performed unexpectedly well," she communicated telepathically, her tone measured but tinged with curiosity. "Your species possesses latent abilities far beyond our initial assessments." Olivia met the alien leader's gaze, her jaw set with determination. "You mocked us for being fragile," she said, her voice steady despite her fatigue. "But fragility isn't weakness. It's what drives us to adapt, to survive. And now you've seen exactly what we're capable of." Xynara's form flickered, slightly a sign of uncertainty. "Perhaps we misjudged you," she admitted. "But there is much we still do not understand. You will undergo further tests to determine whether your newfound abilities are sustainable." Ethan exchanged a glance with Olivia. They both knew the trials were far from over. But for the first time since entering the Velan ship, they felt a spark of hope. Humanity had proven itself resilient, adaptable, and full of surprises. Whatever lay ahead, they were ready to face it head-on. Outside the ship, the world held its breath, waiting for news of the chosen representatives. Social media buzzed with theories and speculation, while scientists debated the implications of the Velan's arrival. For better or worse, humanity's fate now rested in the hands of 4 ordinary people who had discovered extraordinary potential within themselves. The Valans wasted no time in preparing for the next round of tests. Ethan, Olivia, Daniel, and Claire were led to a new chamber, this one even larger and more complex than the last. The walls shimmered with faint, pulsating lights, and the air carried a strange hum that made their skin tingle. Xynara stood at the center, her crystalline form glowing brighter than before. "You have demonstrated remarkable resilience," she said telepathically, her voice calm but tinged with curiosity. "But your abilities must be tested further. Can they withstand prolonged challenges? Will they evolve or falter?" Ethan glanced at his companions. They all looked exhausted, their faces pale and their clothes damp with sweat from the previous trials. Yet there was a determination in their eyes, a refusal to give up. He clenched his fists, ready for whatever came next. The chamber shifted around them, transforming into a vast desert landscape. The ground beneath their feet turned to sand, hot and unyielding, while the air grew dry and oppressive. Above them, 2 suns blazed in the sky, doubling the heat. Holographic projections showed scorpions and snakes slithering across the dunes, their movements eerily lifelike. "This is insane," Daniel muttered, shielding his eyes from the glare. "How are we supposed to survive this?" "We adapt," Claire replied firmly. "That's what we've been doing this whole time." Olivia nodded, scanning the horizon. "We need to conserve energy, stick together and move slowly. The heat will drain us if we rush," Ethan agreed, taking point as they began their trek across the simulated desert. Every step felt like walking through molten glass, the sand burning their feet even through their shoes. But they pressed on, supporting each other when someone stumbled or slowed down. As they walked, Claire noticed something unusual. Her skin, exposed to the harsh sunlight, wasn't blistering or peeling as it should have been. Instead, it seemed to thicken slightly, forming a protective layer against the UV rays. She touched her arm experimentally, marveling at how smooth yet tough it felt. "Look at this," she said, showing the others. "It's like our bodies are creating natural armor." Daniel examined his own hands, which had developed calluses almost overnight. "This is crazy. It's like we're evolving right in front of our eyes. Olivia frowned, deep in thought. Maybe the Valens are triggering dormant genes in our DNA. Stress forces our bodies to unlock hidden potential. That's what Claire figured out earlier. But now it's happening faster, more efficiently. Ethan didn't respond. He was, too busy focusing on keeping the group moving forward. The heat was relentless, sapping their strength with every passing minute. Even with their newfound resilience, they weren't invincible. They needed water, and soon. Just as the thought crossed his mind, a mirage appeared in the distance. An oasis, complete with palm trees and a shimmering pool of water. The sight was tempting, almost too perfect. Ethan hesitated, unsure whether to trust it. It's probably another test, Olivia warned, her voice low. Don't fall for it. But Daniel couldn't resist. He broke away from the group, running toward the illusion. As he reached out to touch the water, the scene dissolved, leaving him standing in the middle of the barren desert. A holographic snake lunged at him, its fangs sinking into his leg. Pain shot through his body and he collapsed, clutching his wound. Claire rushed to his side, checking the bite. Once again, their incredible healing kicked in, neutralizing the venom and repairing the damage. But the incident served as a reminder. The Valens weren't playing fair. Every step of the way was designed to push them to their breaking point. After hours of trudging through the endless sands, the group finally spotted a structure in the distance. A massive pyramid made of black stone. Relief washed over them as they approached, hoping it would provide shelter from the relentless heat. But as they stepped inside, they realized the pyramid was far from safe. The interior was pitch dark, save for faint red lights that pulsed along the walls. The air was thick and humid, making it hard to breathe. Strange sounds echoed through the corridors, whispers, growls, and the sound of dripping water. It was clear the Valens had saved their most dangerous test for last. This place gives me the creeps, Daniel admitted, his voice trembling. What's waiting for us in here? Whatever it is, we'll face it together, Ethan said firmly. He pulled a small flashlight from his pocket, its beam cutting through the darkness. Olivia followed close behind, her sharp mind analyzing every detail. Claire brought up the rear, keeping an eye out for any signs of danger. They moved cautiously, through the labyrinthine halls, their footsteps echoing loudly. Suddenly the floor beneath them shifted, causing Claire to lose her balance. She fell into a hidden trapdoor, disappearing into the darkness below. Claire! Ethan shouted, rushing to the edge of the opening. He peered down, his heart racing. Below, Claire lay on a pile of soft moss, unharmed but disoriented. I'm okay, she called back, brushing herself off. But I think I found something. Ethan lowered himself into the pit, helping Claire stand. The room they had fallen into was unlike anything they'd seen so far. The walls were covered in strange symbols that glowed faintly, and in the center of the room stood a pedestal holding a vial filled with a glowing blue liquid. What is that? Olivia asked, joining them after finding her own way down. Claire picked up the vial carefully, examining it. It could be some kind of serum. Maybe the Valens use it to enhance their own abilities. Or maybe it's meant for us, Ethan suggested. If we can figure out what it does, it might help us survive the rest of the tests. After debating briefly, they decided to take the risk. Claire injected a small amount of the serum into her arm, bracing herself for the effects. At first nothing happened. Then warmth spread through her body, followed by a surge of energy. Her senses sharpened and she felt stronger, faster, more alert. It works, she said, handing the vial to Ethan. Try it. One by one they administered the serum, feeling its effects immediately. Their reflexes improved, their stamina increased, and their injuries healed even faster than before. For the first time since entering the pyramid, they felt truly prepared for whatever lay ahead. With renewed confidence, they continued their exploration. The deeper they went, the more challenging the obstacles became. Poisonous gas filled certain rooms, forcing them to hold their breath until they could escape. Sharp spikes shot out of the walls without warning, testing their agility and coordination. And holographic predators stalked them relentlessly, attacking with terrifying speed. Yet with each challenge, the humans adapted further. Their bodies responded to every threat, growing stronger and more resilient with each passing moment. Even Zinara, watching from her control panel, couldn't hide her astonishment. These creatures, once dismissed as fragile and insignificant, were proving themselves capable of feats beyond imagination. Finally, they reached the heart of the pyramid, a massive chamber filled with swirling energy fields. In the center stood Zinara, her form pulsating with light. She raised a hand, signaling for silence. "You have exceeded our expectations," she said telepathically, her voice tinged with both admiration and unease. "Your species possesses a unique ability to overcome adversity, to transform weakness into strength. We underestimated you." Olivia stepped forward, meeting the alien leader's gaze. "And now? What happens next?" Zinara hesitated, her crystalline body flickering slightly. "We will continue our studies, but not as conquerors. Perhaps as allies." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. For the first time, humanity had earned the respect of an advanced alien race. But the journey was far from over. There were still questions to answer, mysteries to unravel, and challenges to face. As they left the pyramid and returned to the main chamber, Ethan, Olivia, Daniel, and Claire exchanged knowing looks. Whatever the future held, they were ready. Together, they had proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology or weapons. It was the indomitable spirit that refused to give up, no matter the odds. Outside the ship, the world waited anxiously for news of their representatives. Rumors spread about the Valen's intentions, sparking debates and discussions worldwide. Some feared invasion, while others hoped for peace. But one thing was certain: humanity's encounter with the Valens had changed everything. For Ethan and his companions, the adventure was only beginning. They had unlocked a power within themselves that few could have imagined. And with that power came responsibility. The responsibility to protect their planet, unite their people, and show the universe that humanity was far stronger than anyone had ever believed. The final test was unlike anything Ethan, Olivia, Daniel, and Claire had faced before. Zinara led them to a massive arena that seemed alive with energy. The walls shimmered like liquid silver, constantly shifting and changing shape. Above them, the ceiling opened up to reveal a simulated sky filled with swirling clouds and bursts of lightning. The air crackled with electricity, making their hair stand on end. "This is your ultimate trial," Zinara announced telepathically. Her voice echoed in their minds, calm but firm. "You will face challenges not just as individuals, but as a group. Your ability to work together will determine your success or failure." Ethan glanced at his companions, each of them standing, tall despite the exhaustion they felt from previous tests. They had come so far, endured so much, and now it all came down to this. He nodded silently, signaling his readiness. Olivia tightened her grip on the strap of her bag, her sharp eyes scanning the arena for clues. Daniel cracked his knuckles nervously while Claire adjusted the vial of serum still tucked safely in her pocket. If things got bad, they could rely on it again, but only as a last resort. Without warning, the ground beneath them began to shake violently. Cracks appeared in the floor, splitting open to reveal deep chasms filled with molten lava. The heat radiated upward, forcing the group to move quickly. Platforms rose from the gaps, forming a precarious path across the fiery expanse. "We need to stay close," Olivia instructed, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "If one of us falls behind, we all fail." They moved carefully, leaping from platform to platform. Each step required precision and trust. When Claire slipped, Ethan caught her arm just in time, pulling her back to safety. "Thanks," she said breathlessly, her heart pounding. She didn't need to say more. They all understood how close they'd come to disaster. As they reached the other side, the environment shifted again. The lava disappeared, replaced by towering waves of water crashing against the walls. Rain poured down relentlessly, soaking them within seconds. Holographic projections of sharks circled below, their teeth glinting menacingly. The platforms became slick with rainwater, making every step treacherous. "This is impossible," Daniel shouted over the roar of the storm. His feet skidded on a wet surface, and he barely managed to catch himself before falling into the churning water. "It's not impossible," Ethan replied firmly. "We've made it this far because we adapt. Keep moving." Claire noticed something strange about the water. It wasn't just holograms. It was real, somehow materialized by the Veilon technology. She dipped her hand into it cautiously and felt its icy coldness seep into her skin. But instead of freezing her, her body adjusted instantly, generating warmth to counteract the temperature. She smiled faintly, realizing once again how extraordinary their abilities had become. The next challenge came in the form of collapsing structures. Massive pillars descended from the ceiling, smashing into the platforms and forcing the group to scramble for higher ground. Olivia spotted a narrow ledge running along the wall and pointed it out. "Up there! We can climb!" Ethan went first, using his enhanced strength to pull himself onto the ledge. Once secure, he reached down to help the others. Daniel hesitated, his fear of heights evident in his wide eyes, but Claire urged him forward. "You've got this," she said encouragingly. With a deep breath, Daniel grabbed Ethan's hand and hauled himself up. The ledge led them to a bridge, suspended high above the arena. Below, jagged rocks jutted out like teeth, ready to impale anyone who fell. The bridge swayed dangerously as they crossed, its ropes fraying with each step. Halfway across, Claire froze, her legs trembling. "I can't do this," she whispered, panic rising in her chest. "Yes, you can," Olivia said firmly, gripping her arm. "Look at me. Focus. One step at a time." With Olivia's guidance, Claire forced herself to keep moving. By the time they reached the other side, her hands were shaking, but she was alive and grateful. Finally, they arrived at the center of the arena, where Zenara awaited them. Around her, holographic projections showed scenes of destruction. Cities crumbling under alien attacks, forests burning, oceans rising. It was a grim vision of what could happen if humanity failed to unite. "These are the threats your world faces," Zenara explained. "Not just from us, but from yourselves. Your species has great potential, but also great flaws. Greed, division, and fear threaten to destroy you long before any external force could." Ethan stepped forward, his jaw set with determination. "We're not perfect," he admitted, "but we're learning. Every challenge we face makes us stronger, and we don't give up. Not when there's still hope." Zenara studied him closely, her crystalline form flickering slightly. "Hope, an emotion we thought we had outgrown. Yet perhaps it is what we lack most." Olivia took a step closer, meeting Zenara's gaze without flinching. "If you want to understand us, then understand this. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our ability to heal or adapt. It's our connection to one another. We fight for each other, protect each other, and find ways to rebuild even after everything falls apart." For a moment, silence filled the arena. Then Zenara lowered her head, a gesture that might have been respect or acknowledgement. "You have proven yourselves worthy," she said finally. "Worthy not just of survival, but of partnership." The words sent a wave of relief through the group. They had done it. Against all odds, they had earned the Veilon's respect, and possibly their alliance. Back on Earth, news of the humans' success spread rapidly. Social media erupted with celebrations, and world leaders scrambled to prepare for the next steps. The Veilons agreed to share their knowledge and technology, offering solutions to some of humanity's greatest challenges: climate change, disease, and resource scarcity. In return, they asked to study humanity further, eager to learn from the resilience and creativity they had witnessed. Ethan, Olivia, Daniel, and Claire returned home as heroes, their names etched into history. But they knew their journey wasn't truly over. The bond they had formed during the trials would carry them forward, inspiring others to embrace unity and cooperation. In the months that followed, humanity began to change. Advances in medicine allowed doctors to replicate the regenerative abilities discovered during the tests. New technologies emerged, powered by insights gained from the Veilans. And though disagreements and conflicts still arose, people found common ground more often than before. One evening, Ethan stood on a rooftop overlooking the city. The lights twinkled below, a reminder of how far they had come. Olivia joined him, leaning against the railing as she gazed at the stars. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Ethan smiled, his green eyes reflecting the glow of the cityscape. "Now, we build something better. Together." Olivia nodded, a sense of hope swelling in her chest. Humanity had faced its greatest test, and passed. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time it felt possible. Possible to dream of a brighter future, not just for themselves, but for generations to come. And somewhere among the stars, the Veilans watched, intrigued by the fragile yet unbreakable species they had once dismissed. Perhaps they thought there was wisdom in imperfection after all. The alliance between humanity and the Veilans marked the beginning of a new chapter in Earth's history. For weeks after the tests, scientists, politicians, and ordinary citizens worked tirelessly to understand what this partnership meant. The Veilans shared their knowledge freely, offering solutions to problems that had plagued humanity for centuries. Renewable energy sources powered cities without pollution, advanced medical treatments cured diseases once thought incurable, and food production soared thanks to sustainable farming techniques. Ethan, Olivia, Daniel, and Claire found themselves at the center of it all. They became ambassadors of sorts, bridging the gap between humans and the alien visitors. Ethan spent most of his days in labs, studying how the regenerative abilities they had discovered could be applied to everyday medicine. Olivia collaborated with astrophysicists, analyzing the Veilans' technology to unlock even more possibilities. Daniel worked on engineering projects, helping design machines inspired by Veilan innovations, while Claire focused on understanding the biological implications of their newfound resilience. Despite the excitement, tension simmered beneath the surface. Not everyone trusted the Veilans. Some feared their intentions, believing the aliens might exploit humanity's resources or use their knowledge for control. Conspiracy theories spread online, fueled by fear and mistrust. Protesters gathered outside government buildings, holding signs that read "No alien deals" and "Protect humanity first." Claire noticed the growing unrest during one of her public appearances. She was speaking at a university about the science behind their accelerated healing when a man in the audience stood up, shouting accusations. "How do we know they're not manipulating us?" he demanded. "What if this is just another test? Another way to prove we're weak?" The room fell silent, all eyes turning to Claire. She took a deep breath, meeting the man's gaze calmly. "I understand your concerns," she said, her voice steady. "We've asked those same questions ourselves, but here's what I know. The Veilans didn't come here to destroy us. If they wanted to, they could have done so easily. Instead, they chose to learn from us and teach us in return." Her words seemed to ease some of the tension, but the skepticism lingered. It was clear that building trust would take time. Meanwhile, Zinara and her fellow Veilans continued to observe humanity closely. Their initial curiosity had deepened into something resembling admiration. They marveled at how quickly humans adapted to new ideas, embracing change even when it was difficult. Yet they also saw the flaws, the divisions, the greed, the fear that threatened to undo progress. One evening, Zinara approached Ethan and Olivia as they reviewed data in a lab. Her crystalline form pulsed softly, casting a faint glow over the equipment. "Your species fascinates me," she said telepathically. "You are capable of such beauty and such destruction. How do you balance these extremes?" Olivia set down her tablet, considering the question. "It's not easy," she admitted. "We make mistakes, lots of them, but we also learn from them. Every failure teaches us something new, helps us grow stronger." Ethan nodded in agreement. "That's why we need people like you," he added, looking at Zinara. "To remind us of what's possible, to push us to be better." Zinara tilted her head slightly, her light flickering as though processing his words. "Perhaps that is why we were drawn to your world," she replied. Not because you are perfect, but because you strive to improve. As the weeks turned into months, the collaboration yielded incredible results. Cities transformed into eco-friendly hubs powered entirely by clean energy. Medical centers used regenerative therapies to heal injuries and illnesses faster than ever before. Farmers adopted Veylan-inspired methods to grow crops in harsh climates, feeding communities that had once struggled with famine. But the changes weren't just technological, they were social too. Inspired by the unity shown during the trials, people began working together in ways they hadn't before. Neighbors helped neighbors rebuild after natural disasters. Scientists from different countries shared research openly, breaking down barriers that had existed for decades. Even small acts of kindness like volunteering at shelters or planting community gardens became more common. Still, challenges remained. In remote parts of the world, resistance to the Veylan alliance grew stronger. Armed groups attacked facilities where human Veylan projects were underway, claiming the aliens were corrupting Earth's culture. Governments struggled to maintain order, torn between protecting their citizens and preserving the fragile peace. During one particularly tense meeting, Ethan slammed his fist on the table in frustration. "We can't let fear dictate our future," he exclaimed. "Every step forward comes with risks, but giving up now would mean throwing away everything we've achieved." Olivia placed a calming hand on his arm. "He's right," she told the others. "If we want this partnership to succeed, we have to address the fears, not ignore them. People need to see the benefits firsthand." With that in mind, the team launched a global outreach program. They traveled to communities around the world, showcasing the positive impacts of the alliance. In drought-stricken regions, they demonstrated irrigation systems that brought life back to barren fields. In overcrowded cities, they introduced affordable housing designs made from sustainable materials. And everywhere they went, they really listened to people's concerns, offering reassurance and practical solutions. Slowly but surely, attitudes began to shift. The protests dwindled, replaced by curiosity and cautious optimism. Even skeptics who had once opposed the alliance started to see its value. A farmer in Africa credited the new farming techniques with saving his family from starvation. A doctor in South America praised the regenerative treatments for curing patients who had given up hope. Stories like these spread, inspiring others to embrace the changes. Back in New York City, Ethan stood on the rooftop again, this time joined by all 4 members of the original team. The skyline sparkled below, brighter and cleaner than ever before. Wind turbines spun lazily in the distance and solar panels covered rooftops across the city. "Do you think we've done enough?" Daniel asked hesitantly, breaking the silence. Claire shook her head. "There's always more to do, but I think we've laid the foundation for something great." Olivia smiled, her sharp eyes reflecting the lights below. "We've proven that humanity isn't defined by its weaknesses. We're defined by how we overcome them." Ethan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "And maybe, just maybe, we've shown the universe that we're worth betting on." Zainara appeared beside them, her presence announced only by the soft hum of energy. "You have done more than survive," she said telepathically. "You have thrived. That is no small feat." Her words hung in the air, carrying a weight that resonated deeply with everyone present. Humanity wasn't perfect, in fact, far from it. But perfection wasn't the goal. Growth was. Progress was. Learning to adapt, to connect, to persevere, that was what mattered most. As the stars twinkled above, the group stood together, united by a shared vision of the future. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but they faced it with courage and determination. Together, they had proven that even the most fragile beings could become unbreakable, if they dared to believe in themselves. And as long as that belief endured, there was no limit to what humanity could achieve.